Back in 1934, the Belgian Defense Department launched a tender for a new aircraft, designated as an aerial cruiser, based on a French concept, which called for a light bomber and reconnaissance aircraft that could also be used as a heavy escort fighter. Two companies presented a design: Stampe and Vertongen with its SV-10, which was covered in a previous video, and LACAB. LACAB, which stands for Les Ateliers de Construction Aéronautique Belge, was a small independent design bureau with its offices in Haren, but it did not have its own production facilities, and their aircraft were to be assembled by other companies. Up until that point, they produced only one aircraft, the LACAB T-7, which was designed as an advanced trainer for the Belgian Aéronautique Militaire, assembled at the Atelier Jeff Heldentops in Saint-Hubert in 1934, but it never entered production, losing out to its competitor, the Stampe SV-5 Tornado. Now, the two companies were once again competing with each other for the new requirement. But in 1935, Jean Stampe dropped out of the competition after the loss of his SV-10 prototype, in which both his son Leon Stampe and his designer Georges Ivanov lost their lives in the crash. In the second half of the 1930s, many companies in Europe were developing new monoplane designs to meet a similar requirement. There was the Dutch with the Fokker G1, the Germans with the Messerschmitt Bf 110, the British with the Westland Whirlwind, and then there was Belgium, who came with, well, this.
What is that? Ugh, it's hideous!
This was the LACAB GR.8. Not only was it one of the ugliest aircraft ever made in Belgium, but it was also outdated from the drawing board stage. While other European nations were building sleek all-metal monoplane designs, LACAB came up with a chunky-looking twin-engine biplane that looked like something from the 1920s. But the aircraft was rolled out in 1936. The GR8 was assembled by Sapka in Evere and was designed by engineers Roger Servier and Vladimir Wolfson, and was built under the watchful eye of its chief of production, Jeff Heldentops. It had a slab-sided steel-tubed and plywood fuselage with a two-bay unequal span wings that were made of wood and fabric. It had a fixed landing gear that used the wheels of the Fokker F7, which was as set in the requirement in 1934. The LACAB GR8 had a length of 13.45 meters and a wingspan of 18 meters, with a wing area of 65 square meters and a height of 4.15 meters. It was manned by a crew of 3 and had a payload of 800 kilograms of bombs. For self-defense, it had 3 manual operated turrets, one in the front, one in the back, and one ventral turret that retracted into the fuselage, each turret containing 2 FN Browning 7.62mm machine guns. The aircraft had an empty weight of 3,400 kilograms and a maximum takeoff weight of 5,200 kilograms. The GR8 was powered by a pair of 14-cylinder Numron 14K Mistral Major radial engines, each producing 780 horsepower. It had a top speed of 360 km per hour, a range of about 1,000 km, and could reach an altitude of 8,800 meters. On the 22nd of February 1936, the LACAB GR8 took off on its first flight. The aircraft performed well and flight testing continued. On the 2nd of June of that same year, it was handed over to the Belgian Aéronautique Militaire for trials and military level testing. Its grotesque appearance quickly earned it the nickname Doryphore, after a species of beetle, as flight test crews believed the aircraft bore an uncanny resemblance to it. After an evaluation, it was found that, while the aircraft was a decent enough light bomber and reconnaissance aircraft, as a fighter its performance was disappointing. It was too slow and not maneuverable enough in that role. Also, when compared to other aircraft at that time, the GR8 was in all aspects obsolete and no orders followed. Knowing this, LACAB was already working on a more advanced design. The CB9 was a low-wing monoplane fighter bomber that could have replaced the GR8. However, by that time, the LACAB Design Bureau was quietly dissolved and taken over and absorbed by Sapka. The LACAB CB9 and its military transport variant, the TR-10, never left the drawing board. Flight testing of the LACAB GR.8 continued until the 4th of April 1938, when the aircraft got badly damaged in a landing accident, resulting in the destruction of the landing gear and the starboard wing. Luckily, the flight test crew, comprising of Captain Isidore Carène and Captain Dominique Potier, managed to get out of the aircraft with no injuries. Even though the aircraft was repaired, it never flew again and went into storage. By that time, it was considered as surplus to requirement, as the Aéronautique Militaire already moved on from the concept and in 1937 ordered 16 Ferry Battle Mark Is from the British to fulfill the role of the light bomber. At that time, the Spanish Republican forces attempted to buy the LACAB GR.8 following its repairs. The Republicans at that time were engaged in the Spanish Civil War against Franco's nationalist forces, and were trying to get anything they can get their hands on, even one-off prototype aircraft. However, when an international arms embargo was enforced against them, the deal never went through. The aircraft remained stored in its hangar at Evere, until it was heavily damaged in a Luftwaffe bombing raid on the airfield in the opening days of the war in May 1940. Later, it ended up being captured by the German army after the defeat of Belgium and was eventually scrapped. The LACAB GR.8 never saw combat, and one can only speculate how it would have fared under wartime conditions. Perhaps it was best that the aircraft never entered military service. Being outdated, obsolete, slow and vulnerable, it would have never stood a chance against anything the Luftwaffe, or even the Allies, had in their inventory.